Wednesday evening, and thanks so much for joining us tonight on UpNorthLive Unscripted at 6:30. A bit of a quiet Wednesday in terms of weather. Some lucky folks did see some peaks of sunshine today, which was absolutely lovely. We also saw a little break in the snow. And Joe, I know you mentioned earlier that we could see some snow tonight, but the big story looking ahead is going to be the wind tomorrow.
Yeah, especially tomorrow afternoon. It won't be too bad in the morning, but the wind will pick up quickly in the afternoon and evening. This is not a massive wind event, but it's going to be windy. And of course, with that, with snow on the ground, I'll probably have some blowing snow too coming up. In fact, a little later, I'm going to show you this, but up in the western UP, I know that's not our area, but there's a blizzard warning up that way because of the amount of wind and some of the snow. So we'll take a look at that, and we'll look at the weekend too. There's another chance for some snow kind of mid-weekend-ish. So we'll break that all down a little later.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe. Our top story tonight takes us to Lansing, where Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced her budget recommendation for 2026. So Budget Director Jen Flood brought it before lawmakers in Lansing this morning. Now, much of the focus is on childhood education and improving infrastructure in the state. Carter Landis with our sister station was there for the presentation and has a recap of everything that happened today.
Discussions around the budget for the fiscal year 2026 have officially kicked off. Lawmakers will now analyze the best ways to provide money for the state. Jen Flood and Kyle Garant presenting Governor Whitmer's proposed budget for next year, one that the governor expects to lower costs for Michigan families.
I look forward to working with each and every one of you in the weeks and months ahead to finalize a budget by July 1st that will benefit every Michigander.
The governor's budget plan includes things like investing in affordable housing, cutting down on price gouging, investing in childhood education, and of course, fixing the roads as well as other utilities improvements. The education plan proposes an increase per pupil funding, equating to nearly $400 per student for a total of $10,000 per pupil.
So the more we invest in our kiddos, the better we're going to be as a state going forward. Our education system in the state of Michigan covers everybody. And so when we, lose that, then what are we left with?
Amid uncertainty of President Trump's federal funding freeze and subsequent rescinding of that memo, lawmakers are worried about where they may turn if they don't have the money. Federal dollars make up nearly 42% of the state's budget. Representative Carol Glanville specifically worried about what will happen to education programs.
All of those supports, if those are uncertain, then we need to figure out how we can budget around that.
Some Republicans also voiced concern about the potential for extra spending. Representative Greg Van Workum hopes the budget can expand on current government programs rather than create spending lines for new ones.
I think we need to take a hard dive and look at some of these departments and some of these programs to see if they're actually producing the results that they were intended to, or whether they're just being expanded and not really helping people.
Today was the beginning of the early stages, and Van Workum expects more dialogue across the aisle about how to help put more money in Michiganders' pockets.
Taking the due diligence, really digging into what these budgets look like. And then you also have new members that have just entered so that they can become up to speed on what we're all funding here at the state level.
Governor Whitmer took to social media to say this will create good-paying jobs and grow Michigan's economy. Lawmakers will meet next week to continue discussing the budget proposal. In Lansing, I'm Carter Landis.
And you heard some reaction from different lawmakers there, but let's turn things over to a lawmaker who represents us in northern Michigan. Our guest today is Democratic State Representative Betsy Kofia. Representative, thanks so much for joining us on Unscripted.
Thank you for having me.
We just kind of heard an overview of some key points of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's budget recommendation for 2026. Let's start off with what your initial reaction to this is.
So as a former Traverse City Area Public Schools employee, I was a special education assistant. I am very pleased to hear the governor talking about investing additional funds in per pupil funding for our students across the state of Michigan. It's very important that we are investing in the next generation. So that's very exciting to me. The early childhood, expanding access to a 3 and 4-year-old preschool, really important. We are a childcare desert in northern Michigan. We have 3 children for every childcare slot. So we need to continue to work on ways to make sure that families have the access to quality childcare and preschool. Those are a couple of initial reactions that I had. I know that the governor has a road funding proposal that is still in process, and we will be hearing more about that. But I'd really like to hear more about funding to fix the damn roads, as she always says. So that's another area of major priority. I am a little concerned about the proposed cuts to public transit. We use Benzibus and Beta in my district, especially a lot of our seniors. It's a growing need for service. And so I'm going to advocate not only to keep the funding at current, but actually to increase as we do the House and Senate versions of the budget.
Are there any other topics or things in the budget recommendation that you're concerned about?
So, I have wide and deep concerns for making sure that Northern Michigan gets its piece of the pie. We have a housing access issue in Northern Michigan, so I will continue to advocate that we are investing funding into helping build out work with our nonprofits. We got some funding. Senator DeMoose and myself got $5 million in last year's budget to build housing for our educator staff. So housing. I'm going to be pushing for additional dollars, especially for mental health. We need to continue to build out mental health services and also inpatient beds for our youth and adults. Those will be areas of big focus for me. But first blush on the governor's proposal, I'm particularly excited about her vision for investing in our next generation in education.
And something that really stood out to me in that story that we played before we brought you on is that around 42% of the state budget recommendation does rely on federal funding. At this point, that is kind of in limbo. Are there some concerns about that right now?
I would encourage every constituent across the state of Michigan, it doesn't matter who you voted for in the last election, when you think about funding for the state budget, as was said, over 42% is from federal funds. And when you think about, for example, education, federal funds help pay for special education, for example. Federal funds pay for Meals on Wheels. They help pay for Head Start classrooms for our young children and families. They pay for veteran services. So I would encourage every constituent to engage your member of Congress, your senators. Call 202-224-3121, which is the Congressional Switchboard, and just encourage them to make sure that they are protecting those vital programs that I know, Michiganders across the political spectrum, our grandparents, our nieces and nephews, our children, our families, our veteran family members, they need these services, and we need to make sure that as they're looking to trim things up, that we do not do harm to critical parts of service for our constituents. And I have been making those calls as well.
And for the first time as governor, Governor Whitmer must work with a split legislature to pass the budget. So what challenges could this pose?
Oh, look, you have to be willing to work together. We have a constitutional obligation to pass a balanced budget for the state of Michigan. And so personalities and political affiliations aside, I was a county commissioner in the minority for two terms, before I became a state lawmaker. And you have to find ways to compromise and work across difference to deliver for the people of Michigan. I think that is what I've heard from constituents. They're tired of us just fighting. They want us to actually work together to deliver for the people of Michigan. How you get there? Sometimes there can be disagreements, but we have to keep at it. And we have to advocate, like I said, for the federal budget. Let's advocate and hear the voices of the constituents for the services that they feel are very important, like Meals on Wheels, Head Start, special education, et cetera.
So are lawmakers in Lansing kind of already planning or preparing in case we don't get that federal money for these programs?
It's, I think there's a lot of interesting conversation happening with our federal representatives to try to understand what the federal plan is, because we went from, sort of a funding freeze that kind of came out of nowhere. And there are Head Starts and Meals on Wheels across the state of Michigan they are in a situation where they don't have access to their funding. So we are really trying to understand what the plan is at the federal level and have been engaged with our federal representatives and trying to engage with the White House as well. We need to make sure that our residents are kept whole. And again, we can advocate at the state level. And I think that constituents, we have 10 million Michiganders who rely on these services, and we need to just convey how important they are to our federal representatives. And the White House has a comment line as well. I would encourage people to reach out.
And you mentioned the importance of hearing from your constituents. The budget recommendation just announced this morning, but have you heard any reaction from your district on what our constituents are saying about this?
So I was in session earlier today. My staff have been, working the phones, and I will be checking in with them tomorrow morning. To kind of hear if we got an immediate feedback. The piece about the public transit and the governor's proposal, I already know because I worked quite a bit with the folks from Benzie Bus and Beta last year to advocate for not only keeping the funding but also increasing it. So I kind of knew right away what Kelly and Jessica at Beta and at Benzie Bus would be thinking. But I will be in robust conversation with my local constituents about this. I actually have a coffee hour next Monday at the Traverse Area District Library. It's posted on my website. Folks are welcome to come and share their thoughts.
Very good to know. Anything else that you want to mention about the budget recommendation that we haven't addressed yet?
Just to reiterate again, there's a lot that's sort of fluid with the new administration coming in. And if the programs, so they're Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Meals on Wheels, Veteran Services, Head Start, if those are important to you and the people that you care about, I would encourage you, again, 202-224-3121 is the congressional switchboard. And now is a really important time to be advocating on behalf of those programs.
Thanks so much, Representative Kofia, for joining us on Unscripted. We really appreciate it. And let's turn things over to our question of the day related to the budget recommendation for 2026. So what would you rank as your top priority for this year's budget? Scan the QR code on your screen right now. That'll take you to our website. Our options are education, creating jobs, infrastructure, and public safety. So at the end of the show, we will look at the live results and read some of your comments for what you think is your top priority for our state's budget. But turning over to some more local news mixed with a bit of a national tie. So the U.S. Border Patrol says it has almost 20,000 agents, and 85% of them are on the Mexican border, the so-called front lines of the migrant crisis. But what a lot of people, I think, don't realize is that there's a smaller, dedicated crew of agents patrolling the Upper Peninsula. And our very own Daniel Zivian spent some time with those agents and has more in tonight's special report.
I heard an agent say a long time ago that the southern border is like checkers, while the northern border is like chess. If that makes any sense, right? You're not just going to go out on the northern border and observe crossers in front of you. I mean, that seldom happens.
It very seldom happens in Michigan. Despite last year's major spike in illegal crossings along the border with Canada, the Detroit sector, covering 4 states, only reported around 600 out of more than 20,000 encounters.
Every day is different. It's very dynamic. You never know what you're going to get into.
The sector's most expansive patrols are in the woods and swamps of the eastern UP. Many agents are born and raised Michiganders, returning home after stints elsewhere.
Border security up here, I would say, is a community effort. Somebody up here out on the water, be it fishing or some kind of recreational activities, thinking that something that they've observed or that they're currently observing doesn't look like a normal activity. So they'll call it in.
We're on patrol 5 days, 5 10-hour days. Every single week. We're on patrol in snowmobiles, 4-wheelers, PWCs, boats. Right now, it's about 6 degrees out when we're on the sled, going 30, 40 miles an hour. It's probably 20 or 30 below. The elements are brutal.
Patrol agents are in a unique position to help others in the wilderness. View says he picked up a call in December and was first on the scene, even from 20 miles away.
My partner and I were on patrol in Paradise, Michigan. And we heard a call coming across the radio about a vehicle that had been involved in an accident. A subject was pinned inside the vehicle. It was on its side in a ditch full of water. The upper portion of his body was also in the water. So we were worried about hypothermia setting in. Whitefish Fire Department volunteers were laying in the water next to him. Everybody was basically working together as a team, as a community. And we were able to get this guy safely to a hospital.
Quiet patrols aside, there's more activity at crossings like the International Bridge. Detroit customs officers seized about 4,000 pounds of drugs last year, including 11 pounds of fentanyl.
People can't inundate us enough with phone calls and information. Let us go out there and take care of it, whatever that might be. And if it chalks up to be nothing, that's a win for everybody. You know, that's a win for border security, which means these local residents are safe. That means the state's safe, and nationally, it's a win for national security.
In Chippewa County, Daniel Zivian, UpNorthLive News.
And Danielle went on patrol with agents in January, but just yesterday, Border Control announced that the Sioux Station arrested a Venezuelan gang member who was attempting to retrieve a previously seized vehicle. Border Patrol says the individual was turned over to ICE. Let's take a quick commercial break, but Chief Meteorologist Joe Charlevoix will have much more on your forecast for the rest of the week and the weekend coming up next.
I'm Jada Johnson from Big Boys TV, and the Fish and Game Report is sponsored by Johnson's Propane.
We saw a little break from the snow today, but more snow is on the way. Let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Joe Charlevoix. Joe, when could we start to see some of this snow falling from the sky?
Well, a little bit after midnight, so another 5-6 hours for some spots. But if you're out and about the next couple hours here, no issues coming in. Let's go to Blair Township. That is in Grand Traverse County. This is earlier today. We had our UpNorthLive Skyview drone out once again. And kind of nice to see the blue sky there. And the roads aren't in bad shape. If you look at the roadway there, quite a bit of snow on the ground. And we're going to see a little more coming in. Now, there's not going to be a ton of snow tonight through tomorrow. This will be kind of a lighter snow event, but a little bit of snow is in the forecast. Here's a look around the Midwest tonight. And there's radar. And you can see some of that snow now from Minnesota into western Wisconsin, starting to work in there. By the way, up in the western UP, this is a blizzard warning. Even though we live in the Great Lakes, we get a lot of snow. We don't see blizzard warnings too often because you have to have that combination of strong wind and snow. But up in the Keweenaw Peninsula, the western UP down toward Ontonagon, that area, blizzard warning tomorrow through early Friday with what should be whiteout conditions there. Meanwhile, around Newberry, Luce County, we do have a winter weather advisory. That's back in our area. And then we'll jump down by Ludington and also Oceana counties and Mason County. We have a high wind advisory. So those are the official advisories in effect for our area. So here's what's going on. We had high pressure overhead earlier today that has slid off now into the eastern part of the country over New York State tonight. And then there's our low south of Rapid City that will, again, track toward the region, bringing in that chance for some snow. Here's what it looks like on Stormcast. Quiet right now. We'll continue to cloud up. There's around 3 o'clock, some snow. Those pink areas south of Reed City, a little bit of sleet could mix in down that way, but primarily snow. Again, this is going to be kind of a hodgepodge of off and on snow in the morning. Roads could still be messy, though, and then that'll kind of move out of here as we head into the afternoon. If you're down around Cadillac tomorrow afternoon, I think we get some late afternoon sunshine, maybe around Traverse City, Ludington, Manistee, late tomorrow. The other part of this, that's what's coming in tonight, is the lake effect snow in the UP. See how that picks up? That's tomorrow night into Friday. So if you're wondering about accumulation, not much tonight, not much tomorrow, an inch or less for most spots. But then up in the UP, there's the lake effect. We're talking to you, Sault Ste. Marie. Could be some heavier snow. One more quick thing. We do have some wind coming in. It picks up in the afternoon. That's tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night. Pretty windy before those come to an end on Friday. And there's the extended forecast. Another round of snow, Maya, mid-weekend, later Saturday into Saturday night.
Thanks, Joe. We're going to take another quick break, but stick with us. Sports is next. You're watching Up North Live Unscripted. For a look at today's top sports stories, let's turn things over to sports director Harrison Beebe, who's joining us from the digital studio. Harrison.
Hey, Maya, yeah, a crazy winter for sports to talk about between all the success for the Detroit sports teams and a lot of good schools playing great here in the winter sports here in northern Michigan. But we start with some downers from late last night. Michigan State falling short to UCLA. That's now 2 straight losses for the Spartans, and that puts them now in second in the Big Ten standings behind Purdue. The good news is they still play Purdue one time, and they play the Michigan Wolverines twice here in this final month stretch of the season. Should be some exciting stuff as we lead into March. After all, that's what college basketball is all about, right? The Red Wings were able to perform really well out west, defeating Seattle. 7 straight wins for the Red Wings. We've been harping on them, I believe, the past 2 nights here on Unscripted. They just keep finding ways to win. Now, here locally in northern Michigan, we're profiling a few area teams. We know last night we saw the McBain Ramblers defeat Beale City for the lead in the Highland Conference boys standings, and some impressive work from McBain. They're a top 10 ranked team, as we saw in the polls today, and that impressiveness and athleticism was well on display in the 15-point win over Beale City. Tonight, it's about the girls' Highland Conference standings. Everett and Manton are the top 2 teams in that league race. The Wildcats have a 1-game lead on the Rangers, but Manton hosts tonight, and I'm on my way down to catch that game. We'll see what happens for those highlights tonight during sports at 11. The Pistons also in action tonight. They have to face the Cleveland Cavaliers yet again. The big thing a lot of people are circling, the NBA trade deadline being tomorrow. We know the Lakers already made a huge bombshell deal earlier this week with Luka Doncic coming over. Will the Pistons make a move? They actually already made it a move. KJ Martin is now part of the group from the Philadelphia 76ers. The Pistons acquiring KJ and 2 second-round draft picks in order to pay his salary. They had the cap space, one of the few teams in the league to be able to have extra cap space to fill here before the trade deadline. So we'll see. Maybe that'll be a nice move going forward. But either way, the Pistons have no doubt looked way more impressive this year than they did a year ago. All right, that's going to do it for me, Maya, and recapping sports here on Unscripted. Back to you.
Thanks, Harrison, and we'll see you tonight during sports at 11. But right now, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we will take a live look at our question of the day results and read a few of your comments. So stay with us.
Salon services are furnished by Epiphany Advanced Academy in East Acme.
Governor Whitmer announced her budget recommendation for 2026 this morning. So our question today is, what would you rank as your top priority for this year's state budget? 49% say infrastructure, 23% creating jobs, 17% education, and 11% public safety. Going over to our Facebook page, Laura says her top priorities: education, clean water and lands, continued work on our infrastructure and roads. And Linda says the housing crisis. You can join the conversation by going to our Up North Live Facebook page. But that will do it tonight for Up North Live Unscripted at 6:30. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope to see you back here on Up North Live News at 11. Take care, everyone. Thank you.